You ever come home from 18 months overseas, serving your country, dodging mortars, thinking nothing back home could possibly shock you, only to find out you just lost a war you didn't even know was happening? Yeah, that happened to me. Army vet, 20 years, just trying to catch my breath and build a little piece out in Grandpa's woods. But let me back up a sec, because the story you're about to hear isn't just about land. It's about legacy, dirty money, 3 generations of fraud, and how a family of crooks got outplayed by the very veteran they tried to rob. The first thing that hit me, even before the shock, was the smell. Asphalt, still steaming where wildflowers used to bloom. My grandpa's 40-acre pine forest was now home to a Starbucks, a Pure Bar, a vape shop, and more nail salons than I could count. 15 shining storefronts, all lined up where the oaks used to stand like sentinels older than the county itself. And in the middle of it all, clicking across the parking lot in $900 heels, was Cordelia Ashworth, president of the HOA, with a white Range Rover idling like a smug tank at her back. She looked me dead in the eye, handed me an eviction notice on my own dirt, smiling that poisonous little smile. "Sir, you're trespassing on commercial property," she says. Most vets would have gone full Rambo, right? Me? I just smiled, nodded, and told her, "Ma'am, you picked the wrong soldier. But please, finish the ribbon cutting." Because what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Grandpa had left me a trump card. A hand-drawn 1942 survey. Buried deep in his will. One faded ink line was about to blow up their whole empire. My name's Ezra Blackwood, 52, Army vet, single dad to Sage, who at 16 already outsmarts me 6 days out of 7. My grandpa, Samuel Blackwood, Korean War vet, old-school surveyor, spent 70 years turning a Virginia pine forest into his sanctuary. He built a stone bridge by hand, mapped every boundary himself, and told me more than once, never trust a man who rushes a survey or a handshake. For years, that land was where my soul went to breathe. After the military, I figured I'd finally build a little retirement cabin out there. Nothing fancy, just enough for Sage and me to fish, to think, to remember what quiet sounds like. But bills pile up, life gets messy, and when my unit deployed for 18 months, I left Sage with my sister Rebecca, kissed her on the head, and shipped out, never guessing what was coming. I came back to find everything I loved bulldozed. Old oaks felled. Creek forced underground in concrete pipes. My grandpa's bridge buried beneath 8 inches of new asphalt. Cordelia, 48, real estate shark, married to city councilman Derek Ashworth, whose development company miraculously got the zoning rights, lived in a $1 million mansion overlooking what used to be my trees. While I was away, her HOA filed complaints, called my land an eyesore, and quietly used a forged easement to claim it as abandoned. Derek pushed commercial zoning through on the sly. By the time I got back, 15 businesses were open for business. And Sage cried when she saw her childhood creek paved over. But see, Cordelia didn't know about Grandpa. He wasn't just a surveyor. He drew the original county maps, by hand, with a military engineer's obsession. He'd caught fraudsters before. Hell, in '63, he busted Derek's grandfather pulling the exact same con. Turns out, these folks had been at this for generations. Grandpa left me not just land, but a roadmap, a set of files documenting every trick the Ashworths ever pulled. He'd seen this coming. Standing there in the parking lot, breathing diesel instead of honeysuckle. I felt the old military calm come over me. You don't go to war angry. You go patient. You go prepared. Let him finish building. Let him spend every last dollar. Then hit him where it hurts. The next day, Cordelia rolls up again. 3 HOA board members in tow, plus some lawyer in a suit that probably cost less than her shoes. "Mr. Blackwood, we have ironclad documentation," she lays out a mess of paperwork on her hood. Tax liens, zoning transfers, all notarized and stamped. Even my grandfather's signature on one. But here's the thing. Grow up watching a surveyor. You know a fake from a mile away. The legal descriptions didn't match. The signature? Not even close. While they flexed their forgeries, I grabbed Grandpa's old compass and chains from the shed. Walked the line myself. His 1942 survey told the real story. Property stretched 200 feet further east. The creek ran right where they said it didn't, making their easement a geographic joke. You can't claim land that's literally underwater. That's when I found Grandpa's old notes, watching for forgeries, anticipating the very fraud I was staring at now. I called Frank Kowalski, the retired county surveyor who worked with Grandpa for 15 years. Frank took one look and nearly choked on his coffee. Ezra, they didn't even change the typos from the last time they tried this scam. By the end of the week, Frank had remeasured everything with modern GPS. Turns out, 8 of their 15 buildings were entirely on my property, no question. I filed a boundary dispute, documented environmental damages, and prepped for legal battle. Every day, Frank showed up, measuring tape in hand, muttering about kids today who don't know magnetic north from a hole in the ground. The Ashworths fought back dirty. Derek used his council seat to push a compliance review through. HOA started fining me $2,000 a day for unauthorized structures. The tool shed my grandpa built. In 53, suddenly a crime scene. They hired a security company that sent guards in golf carts, hassling me on my own dirt. The main guy, Randy, was this 20-something who kept asking for war stories while writing tickets. Mr. Blackwood, were you ever in combat? By the way, I gotta ask you to leave. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so infuriating. Enter Maya Okonkwo, environmental lawyer, eagle-eyed and sharper than concertina wire. She saw the surveys, the damage, and said, Ezra, this isn't just a property dispute. It's a federal case. They're discriminating against a veteran and poisoning protected land. I suddenly had backup. By month's end, Frank's measuring tape snapping against oak bark was the sound of justice being measured, inch by inch. Cordelia must have sensed trouble, because things got wild. A restraining order, delivered by a deputy who looked downright embarrassed, claimed I'd threatened the HOA with my dangerous military background. The local paper ran a front-page headline, Troubled Veteran Disrupts Community Progress. Anonymous neighbors called me aggressive, unstable. Meanwhile, a private investigator named Murphy started tailing me everywhere, digging for dirt that didn't exist. But they missed their own landmine. Frank's survey showed not 8, but 12 of their 15 buildings were fully on my property, including the medical plaza, Cordelia's precious yoga studio, and half their parking lot. Then Frank found something else, Grandpa's field notes from 42, exposing county clerks forging easements for developers, right down to the map coordinates. Maya's legal research found the real killer, a 1963 newspaper article, Surveyor Samuel Blackwood exposes land fraud ring. The Ashworths had tried this before, and the current forgery was a word-for-word copy. I hired a professional surveyor, marked every boundary with bright orange flags. Every fluttering flag, another nail in their legal coffin. Maya filed suit, boundary fraud, environmental violations, civil rights abuse. The local historical society jumped in, publishing Grandpa's story. Turns out, the honest surveyor was a county legend. A judge granted a restraining order. No new construction till lines were settled. Cordelia would cruise by every morning, counting flags like they were ticks on a doomsday clock, while Frank just waved, coffee in hand. But the Ashworths escalated. Social media rumors, vandalism, daily fines cranked to $5,000. Cordelia even called my old commanding officer, spinning a tale about me being unstable. That backfired. Colonel Martinez called, offered support, and told me, the real threat is anyone who steals a veteran's land while he's deployed. Every time they stole Frank's flags, he'd replace them with something even flashier, explaining surveyor secrets to anyone listening. Derek called an emergency council session at 6 a.m., declared my property a public health nuisance. 47 HOA members filed noise complaints that same morning. Their PI released a report labeling me a domestic extremist. It was war, digital and legal. But Maya worked harder, discovered Derek never got water rights permits to divert the creek, a felony with $500,000 fines per count. They'd also used cheap concrete. Cracks were spreading everywhere. And then came the twist, buried in Grandpa's will, a clause. If the land was ever used for commercial purposes without family consent, it transferred, automatically, to the Virginia State Wildlife Trust. Their crime had triggered a legal doomsday device. Everything, all $8 million of development, would go to conservation. We filed federal suit, civil rights, environmental crimes, Conspiracy under color of law. My story went viral. Veterans in uniform lined up at City Hall in silent protest. Environmental tests found poison levels 400% above EPA standards. Local businesses started boycotting Ashworth development. 6 board members quit in disgust. Cordelia tried to bribe Frank. He laughed her out the room, said he'd rather survey sewage in hell. Federal prosecutors got involved. EPA agents arrived with search warrants. Insurers dropped the Ashworths. Murphy got arrested trying to break into Maya's office. By December, Cordelia was chain-smoking in her Range Rover, lawyers refusing her calls, Derek's company bleeding money. Maya found even more: emails, bribes, asset transfers to the Caymans, every dirty trick they could think of. Every move they made just dug their hole deeper. By the time winter rolled in, the noose was tight. Sealed indictments, federal agents, grand jury ready to drop the hammer. Cordelia filed a false terrorism report, which only brought the FBI down on her. Derek tried to declare bankruptcy. Maya had already filed liens. They even hired private security to follow Sage and Maya's kids, crossing the line from fraud to stalking military families, which brought federal heat. And then came the town hall. 800 people jammed in, news cameras everywhere, federal prosecutors in the front row. I stood up with Grandpa's 1942 survey, laid it on the podium for all to see. Ladies and gentlemen, 6 months ago, I came home to find my family's land stolen, 15 buildings where my oaks used to stand. This is the real survey, verified, mapped, every inch true. The room went dead silent as Maya read the analysis. 12 out of 15 buildings, never legally transferred. All mine. Cordelia shrieked about conspiracies. I just looked at her and said, "You're right. This was a military operation. And you lost." Maya explained the conservation clause. Every illegal act had triggered an automatic transfer to the Wildlife Trust. Colonel Wright, Grandpa's old friend, stood in his dress blues, announced the trust would take possession, convert it all to the Samuel Blackwood Conservation Center. The crowd went wild. People stood, cheered, some cried. FBI agents moved in. Cordelia and Derek were cuffed on the spot. Fraud, embezzlement, environmental crimes. Conspiracy. Their empire was bulldozed for restoration. Clear Creek ran free for the first time in years. My cabin went up, solar-powered, overlooking the water where Grandpa once fished. Sage earned a scholarship to study environmental science, inspired by watching justice win. Rebecca partnered with Maya to fight veteran land theft across the country. Frank became trust head, surveyor. The conservation center became a beacon. School kids learning restoration, veterans rebuilding their lives, oaks and wildflowers blooming again. Cordelia and Derek went to federal prison. Their assets paid for millions in remediation, scholarships, and the Blackwood Veterans Conservation Corps, helping other vets protect America's wild spaces. You know, Grandpa always said patience beats rage. Sometimes you let folks think they're winning while you're setting up their total destruction. That's what happened here. 30 years of preparation wiped out 60 years of corruption, and a family's legacy became something bigger than all of us. If you've ever tangled with a nightmare HOA, drop your wildest story in the comments. What would you have done if you were me? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell, because this country needs more stories of everyday heroes standing up to dirty power and winning with brains, backbone, and a whole lot of heart.